Captain Alan Colbane. Sole defense frigate Calypso, 94 souls aboard. Slow approach to coordinates that hadn't existed on any printed chart before this month. 0614 ship time. Standard watch, lights at half. A bridge at 6 in the morning is mostly silence and recycled air. Mine was holding the configuration I'd left it in 3 hours back. No alarms, no traffic on the open boards. Nobody had cause to wake anyone. To my right, Ops. Commander Priya Naidu had the long-range plot up and was going over it for the second time. She always went over it twice. The first pass was for the panel, the second was for her. To my left, helm, Lieutenant Cole Vance, hands on the controls, eyes on a vector I'd drawn an hour earlier and hadn't found reason to redraw. Behind him, tactical, Lieutenant Idris Bako, running cold checks on weapons that hadn't been warmed in 9 days. Comms, Chief Petty Officer Jun Park, 4 channels lit on his board and his eyes on one. Damage control, Lieutenant Renata Alvarez, the engineering log in one hand and a mug in the other that I had decided 30 hours ago to stop noticing. Off my starboard quarter, in the observer's chair, Admiral Kenji Tanaka was reading a slate. He had been reading the same slate for 14 minutes. The light on it had not changed. Whatever was on the slate, he was not reading it. He was waiting on something none of the rest of us had been told to expect. The bridge had the flatness it gets before something arrives. I had stood through that morning before. Told myself on the strength of it, I would feel it coming. I never did. Then Naidu, her voice came in flat. Con, Ops, 3 contacts below the Ecliptic, climbing hard. No transponder, no IFF. I was out of the chair before she finished the sentence.
Admiral. The first thing I heard off the Calypso wasn't a hail. It was Park, Chief Petty Officer Comms, pushing a sentence across 40,000 kilometers of static and trying to make it sit upright at the other end. He'd been handed the order less than a minute earlier. Clean to the third word. Edges going after that. A comms officer reading a script nobody had finished thinking through, and knowing it. I was inside the records terminal in the commander's quarters of a station that had been a tomb for 42 years. My hands were 2 centimeters from the last paper any of us was going to lift off it. The lamp on my left wrist threw a pool of yellow across the desk and nothing else. The room beyond stayed the color it had been for 4 decades. Park's voice came through the open channel to my engineer like a knock at a door he wasn't sure still opened. Meridian Fault. Meridian Fault. This is Calypso. You need to move. Now. Saya didn't look up. Cross didn't look up. Amara, at the air handling intake at the far end of the room, kept her eyes on the readout in her glove. The 4 of us had been where we were for 19 minutes. The download bar at the corner of my visor said we were 3 minutes from done. I checked the timestamp on the database pull. 94%. We were going to get to 94%. Chapter 1. Quiet Course. 0614 is where this goes wrong. To explain 0614, I have to back up 40 minutes to a coffee nobody drank and a table with 4 things on it. Day 51 of the run. Common room, morning. The lights sat at 3/4. Tomas had the coffee on. Strong, same strength as the morning before and the morning before that. None of us had ever asked him to change it. The ship was quiet, bulkhead hummed down a quarter step, wrist-circ fans pulling slow on the back end of a long burn. 4 objects on the table. Saya's pad, dark, screen down. Amara's recorder, the small one she carried in the field. A folded card Cross had cut from the back of a flight checklist. Because he is 55 subjective years and 97 objective, and he writes by hand. A coffee I had not touched. It had stopped steaming about a minute before I sat down. There was no vote. The 5 of us had sat at this table the night before and said a name out loud for the first time, and the name had not unsaid itself in the 8 hours since. The next step would not be put to a table either. The next step was mine. 8 years of running this ship, and I had spent most of them deferring the part of the job where someone called it. Last night had done the calling for me. This morning I owed them the rest. I gave them the brief. We are going aboard. Saya opens the terminal. Cross reads what comes off it. Amara records the air. Tomas stays with the ship. We have 20 minutes from clamp to clamp. We do not have 21. Saya read me once and nodded. She had taken her hair back behind her ears at some point in the last minute. I had not seen her do it.
I open it, Cross reads it. Amara records the air. 20 minutes.
She had not changed a syllable. That was her acknowledgement. Cross took longer. He always took longer. He used the time and the use was visible, and then he looked at me. His hand stayed flat on the folded card. He had written something on the inside fold that I would not get to see for another 4 hours.
A 42-year-old original, in the sealed condition we have reason to expect, carries an evidentiary weight that a 2102 override copy cannot. The signature page on the original will be in ink. The classification stamp will be physical, not generated. The recipient list will be in her hand. None of that survives a digital reclassification. All of it survives a sealed drawer.
He paused. The pause meant the next sentence was the one.
If you bring me the originals, Captain, I can tell you what they will and will not survive when a senator's lawyer is in the room. That is the only thing I can give you that 10,000 digital copies cannot.
Amara had her recorder open on the table. She did not pick it up. She set 2 fingers on it and left them there.
The air handling is the vector. If there is residue at all, it is in the intake mesh on the command section recirculator. I need 3 minutes at the intake. I will tell you in the first 30 seconds whether there is anything to take. If there is nothing, I leave the recorder and we make the time back.
Tomas had his elbows on the table. He had been in the room before any of us and had been listening longer than the conversation had been running. The coffee in his cup was down to a finger and he had not refilled it.
I keep the engines hot.
1 sentence. The whole of it. Tomas did not negotiate at a table. I looked at each of them. Half a second each. Saya, then Cross, then Amara, then Tomas. None of them looked away. Then I closed the meeting. 20 minutes. Suits on in 10. That was the meeting. 8 years a captain on this ship, and I had never run one that way. The reason was not me. The night before, each of them had walked a piece of what they had been carrying alone over to this table, laid it down, and left it for the table to hold. You do not take a vote on a table like that. You give an order. It gets taken. The work gets done. Chapter 2. What we came for. The suit-up took 8 minutes. Saya was sealed first. Tomas stayed at the drive board with the mains held warm. Not idling, pressurized on the lines. A 30-second decision from a full burn. Cross worked his cuff seals slowly. He had not worn a hard vacuum suit since 2063, and his hands were finding old paths in the dark. Twice his thumb caught a clasp a half centimeter off from where the muscle wanted it, and twice he corrected without saying anything. Amara checked her recorder, then again, then a third time, and caught herself, and stopped. We cycled the lock. The fault was clamped to the station's one intact docking arm, bent at the same angle it had been bent the morning we found it, off a central spine with 3 habitation rings gone dark, the whole structure black against the deeper dark of the outer belt. 42 years dead, the station held no air. We crossed in hard suits, through our airlock and into the stations, hatch to hatch in under a minute. The cold of vacuum bled through the suit's outer layer in the lock, and then I stopped noticing it. I had walked this corridor 3 days ago. 4, depending on how you counted. I had walked it before any of us knew whose signature was on the paperwork that ended 45 lives through the station's own air filtration. Now I knew. The corridor was the same corridor. Same deck plating. Same dust that nothing had moved. It read differently anyway. I did not say that. I said the room number. Commander's quarters. 2 doors down. Saya. She was at the pad already. The lock was a belt-standard mechanical electronic hybrid out of the late 2050s. A Earthside architecture, SDC procurement, 6-month half-life in the field. Defeatable in under 60 seconds by anyone who had read the right 2 pages of the right manual. Saya had read those pages and the ones around them. She did not narrate or talk to herself. The door opened. The room behind it was clean. A workstation, chair pushed in, sealed drawer of physical media beneath it, untouched since the morning 42 years ago, when whoever sat in that chair filed a report, went to sleep, and did not wake up. A coffee mug on the corner of the desk. The residue at the bottom had long gone to dust. Cross sat down at the workstation. He was quiet for a long second. Then he reached out and put his hand flat on the desk, palm down, and held it there. He kept his hand there longer than the gesture asked for. He did not look at me when he spoke.
The same workstation model, the same chair. They were standard issue when the Ardennes deployed. I have not seen one in 42 years.
He withdrew his hand, brought the terminal up. The display flickered once on cold boot and settled into amber. He pulled file index. Saya broke the seal on the drawer. Paper seal. Date stamp in a hand none of us recognized. The month on the stamp was a month none of us had been alive in. The paper was brittle and parted clean along the score. Amara was at the air intake with her recorder running. She held up 2 fingers without looking at me. 2 fingers meant a residue trace inside the noise floor. Something to take. The recorder stayed running. The database pull started. The progress bar did nothing for a long time, and then most of the work at once. 28%. 41. 60. I checked the chrono on the inside of my visor. 11 minutes elapsed. 9 minutes left. Cross worked. The terminal was old. The interface was old. The filing conventions on the screen were the same conventions he had used on the Ardennes 4 decades earlier, and the language of his own youth was answering him back. A manifest came up. Then a personnel roster. Then a classification index. He did not react to any of them. His breathing on the comm stayed flat. He had decided his pulse was not going to show. He reacted on the 4th. It was a small sound. Half a breath out of pattern. On a suitcom at 2-meter range, it landed clean. An outgoing recipient list, dated July 2063, signed in the corner by hand. Cross looked at the signature. Then he looked at me. The amber of the screen lit the underside of his visor.
That is hers. That is her hand. The signature page is ink. I will need a glass to be certain, and I have a glass.
He pulled the glass from his thigh pocket without looking at his hand for it. 42 years, and the pocket was still where the pocket had been. Saya emptied the drawer into a soft case. 3 folders, a sealed envelope, a thin-bound logbook. The case closed under her thumb. Amara sealed her canister, glove in her teeth. The pull crossed 80%. We were going to make it. Chapter 3. 3 contacts.
Naidu's call put me on my feet. The plot had been a single line, Calypso on a slow approach. Now it was a line and 3 new dots, climbing on a deep belt vector no civilian would ever choose, at an acceleration profile no civilian engine could produce. No squawk, no request. They rose out of the bottom of the system on a schedule of their own. The bridge lights were at standard 3rd watch dim. An hour ago I had wanted them that way. I did not now. I left them 2 paces to Naidu's station. She did not move aside. I did not ask. The picture was hers. My job was to read what she had read and decide what she had not been given the authority to decide. Her hand stayed on the trackball. The plot reflected on the inside of her cheekbone in a small green oblong that did not move while she spoke. She fed it to me in pieces. 3 contacts. Fighter-class signatures, inferred from the acceleration curve. 3+ gravities of sustained burn climbing. No carrier on scan, meaning launch from extreme range, by a carrier that wanted no part of the fight. The carrier would hold off. The fighters were the fight. Vance at the helm asked first about the vector. Hold or come about. I gave him 60 seconds on the current heading. A frigate that has not decided is a frigate that does not turn, and I had not yet decided whether this ship was going to fight. He kept his hand on the yoke and his eyes on the screen and did not speak again. Bako had the weapons board up before anyone said anything. Standing order on a frigate at standard watch with 3 unidentified contacts on a hard climb. Tactical comes warm without being asked. Through the hull I heard the railgun turrets cycle to standby. A low grind, 2 seconds, then a softer click as the point defense came off lock. Bako said nothing. Bako at his station does not. Park at communications was watching me. 4 channels live, a 5th held open for the order he already knew. He waited to be told. His pen, set down on the edge of his console 10 minutes earlier, had not been picked up again. I turned to the observer's chair. Tanaka had put the slate down. He was watching the plot. He had been watching it for the 11 seconds since Naidu had spoken. He had not used those 11 seconds for anything else.
Send the warning.
3 words. The order to cross the line from pursuer to ally was that small. I have served under flag officers who would have given me 3 pages to say what Tanaka had just said in 3, and the 3 pages would have said less. I gave Park the nod. Park raised the Meridian Fault. Standard form for warning a civilian vessel under threat from unidentified contacts. The form on every comms officer's reference card for 60 years. The form 19 years of command had never given me cause to hear transmitted. He read it straight. No editorial. No improvisation. He told a civilian survey ship in the next zip code over that they had to move, in the voice of an institution that had decided, 40 seconds ago, to be on their side. I watched Tanaka while Park spoke. Tanaka did not watch Park. He watched the plot. The three contacts had eaten one arc of distance to the station and to my ship in the time it took Park to clear his throat. They were not slowing. When the hail was away, I gave my bridge their orders. I gave them in the order I had learned to give them 19 years ago on a smaller ship. General quarters, action stations, weapons free on positive identification. Vance, come about 30 degrees starboard. Bring our broadside to the lead contact. Bako, you have the picture. Alvarez, full damage control nominal in 90 seconds. Naidu, keep talking. The bridge moved. Vance's left hand went to the yoke and his right to the maneuver throttle, while Naidu bent 2 degrees lower into her plot. Below the deck, a hatch closed and resealed, a sound I had heard in drill 10,000 times, and in the real thing 4. I went back to my chair and sat. I did not, in the sitting, let my back leave the back of the chair. A captain whose back leaves his chair in the first minute of an engagement is a captain whose crew watches him leave it. Mine stayed where it was.
Park's hail came through Tomas's open channel 40 seconds after the database pull crossed 90%. He read it like a recital, 8 seconds, end to end. It ate the rest of the 8 seconds of margin I had been counting on. Saya was already moving toward the drawer before he finished the second sentence. She had read further ahead in this script than I had. I looked at Saya. Saya looked at the drawer. 9/10 empty. Cross was still at the workstation, one hand on the keypad, the other holding a slim gray cartridge he had pulled out of a slot I had not noticed had a slot. Amara was sealing the canister, her thumb running the seal bead twice to be sure. Finish it. Then we go. Cross cleared the workstation in 11 seconds. 4 longer than I would have given anyone else aboard. 4 shorter than I had expected from a man his apparent age. Saya shut the drawer with a soft case under her arm. Amara had the canister at her chest, both hands. We moved. The corridor back to the dock looked the same as the corridor in. Corridors do not change in 19 minutes. What had changed was 3 vehicles climbing out of the bottom of the system at an acceleration profile no one in the belt was supposed to be able to produce. They were coming for this station. We were going to be off it when they got here. That was the plan. Plans on a deep belt station with 3 fighter-class signatures on a hard climb have a habit of being a draft. Tomas had the engines hot. Hotter than the manual recommended. Hot enough for a captain who had put his ship somewhere she should not be.
Clamp release on your word. Burn vector laid in. We go to 0.2G on release, 0.6 at the 80-second mark.
Release. The clamps let go. Chapter 4. Separation. The fault came off the station at 0.2G. The number sounds slow. It is not. 0.2G is the difference between a survey ship moving and one sitting still, applied across a hull rated for 9/10 G sustained. 9/10 the pull of Earth gravity, held, applied without warm-up. The cabin pressed me back into the couch. Light, but enough to remind me whose argument I was losing. The trim hum picked up a quarter tone I had not heard since the run out from Boreas. She is a survey hull. She does not like being asked to behave like a fast ship, and she tells you about it through the deck plates. Saya had navigation. Her left hand sat light on the trim, her right flat on the board with the fingers spread. Cross and Amara were strapped at the rear stations with what we had come out with between them. A paper folder, a stack of optical media, a sealed canister of dust lighter than my hand, 9 kilograms, and a man's memory. That was the haul. I watched the station shrink in the rear quarter view. Watched it because something had said to look at it before it was gone. The station had been a tomb for 42 years. In about a minute, it was going to be less than that. Saya, Vector.
Holding 041 by negative 12.6 G on the 80-second mark. Sprint window opens at 2:30.
Tomas, drive.
She holds.
The bogies had split. 2 peeled toward the station. The third bent toward the Calypso, 20,000 kilometers off our high quarter, already in the first arc of her own turn. On the plot, they were 3 thin red wedges with closure vectors trailing them, the wedges as graphics and the vectors as math. Neither one yet a thing a person had to feel. Amara, behind me, asked the question she did not need to ask.
They are going to kill it.
Yes. Cross said nothing. Cross says nothing when there is nothing to say. The 2 fighters closed on the station. No hail, no transmission. They did what they had been paid to do. Kill a piece of infrastructure that should not have existed, and that whoever signed the check had spent 42 years trying to make never have existed. 4 missile tracks bloomed on the plot. They bloomed clean. Whoever was flying that past knew his work. The station died. The blast was bright on the rear view, briefly bright as a small star, then not. The shockwave overtook us, a luminous front that passed under and through the fault as an EM wash. Short band, broad spectrum. Hardened gear sits through that. Everything softer twitches. The cabin lights guttered once and came back. The plot took 9 seconds to recover. When it returned, the station was a debris field on a vector I did not need to compute to know was going nowhere. I held the bridge for the length of a held breath. Nobody spoke. Amara had her palm flat against the bulkhead at her shoulder, as if checking it was still there. Cross's eyes were closed. Saya looked at her board, only at her board. 45 people had died on that station 42 years ago. The senator who ordered them killed the first time had ordered them killed a second time this morning. There had been nothing left on the station to kill except a building. That did not change what the second killing was. The second killing was a confession, made in the only language she speaks, having other people do it for her. I did not say any of that. The chair does not need editorial. The chair needs the next decision. Tomas, sprint window.
2 minutes and counting.
The 2 fighters that had killed the station were already coming around. Their vectors bent toward us with no waste in the bend. The third, the one that had been gunning for the Calypso, was inside the frigate's engagement envelope now and beginning his pass. Those passes end badly for one side or the other. Saya put a hand flat on her board.
They will be on us in 9 minutes if they do not catch a thermal coast. They will catch a thermal coast. Call it 11.
11 gives me sprint.
It gives us part of sprint. It does not give us all of it.
She had run the geometry twice. She was telling me so. The second pass was in her voice, quieter than the first. I looked back. Amara had the canister in her lap and a hand on Cross's shoulder. Cross was strapped in, eyes closed, breathing through his nose. Slow in, slow out. He was deciding whether to be all right.
He is all right.
She said it for him. Amara does that once a year and means it.
I am all right.
He said it after her, which meant he wasn't, quite. That was why she had said it first. I turned back to the plot. The third fighter was beginning its run on the Calypso. The 2 on us were 30 seconds from being 2 on us at the range that mattered. Tomas, give me everything you can give me without breaking her. We have 11 minutes to get inside the Calypso's point defense bubble. I want 8.
She holds.
Same 2 words as 3 minutes ago. From Tomas, 2 words means yes, and means the room can move on. I keyed the inter-ship channel. The pilot light came up green. The carrier hiss had a slight bend in it from the EM wash. I let it settle for a half second before I spoke. Calypso, this is Meridian Fault. We are clear of the station. We are inbound on your vector. We have 2 on our 6. Park's voice came back inside 3 seconds. Clipped, level, a notch tighter than it had been an hour ago. Meridian Fault, Calypso, come to us, we have a lane. The lane was ours. Chapter 5, First Blood.
The one that broke off was small, sleek, burning hard on a line drawn from itself to me. The plot icon was a clean white wedge with a vector tail twice as long as anything else on the board. No markings, no transponder. Baco's spectrograph put the exhaust at 4,200 Kelvin and rising. Military-grade fuel, military-grade tolerance. The acceleration curve told me what its mother hadn't. Twin missile racks, a forward railgun mount, a point defense suite. No one bolts onto a hull that size unless they already know the hull is going to need it. Naidu called the range every 15 seconds. Flat. 19 years of calling ranges that flat, since a Corvette no longer on any registry, and her voice has never once told me a different story about the same number. Baco had his hands on the tactical board and his eyes on the predicted track. His left thumb rested on the master arm guard, on the small concave depression he'd worn into it across 6 deployments. He asked once if he had weapons free on positive identification. I said yes. He didn't nod. The nod wasn't necessary. Vance held my course to the millimeter, hands quiet on the yoke. Alvarez logged damage control nominal at 91 seconds. That was 1 second long. She'd been off watch when I rang general quarters, had come up 3 decks faster than most engineers find their boots, and was still buttoning the cuff of her duty jacket when she keyed the report. I marked the second on my chrono and didn't log it. Park kept the channels open. The silence on the open guard frequency had weight to it now. Every hauler and survey crew inside 10 light seconds had heard the general quarters call and gone quiet to watch. 3 minutes. That was what the picture gave me before the picture stopped being a picture. I counted my crew. 5. I rehearsed what someone in dress whites would say to their families if I got the next 9 minutes wrong. My younger girl is 14. She's on Luna, at a school I helped pick, in a chemistry class she doesn't like, with a teacher she does. Her last message to me ended with a stupid joke about titration. I let the thought come and I let it go. The chair allows one. 1 is what I take. At the 4-minute mark, he came inside missile range. Naidu called it without inflection. Bako had lock. 4 birds came off the rack in 2 volleys of 2, 0.8 of a second between volleys. A doctrine spread by the book being one I'd carried in my own kit for 11 years. Whoever wrote the doctrine had also written the manual. Bako's point defense engaged. The hull woke up under my boots. A low arterial hum, the cycle of the mass drivers throwing tungsten into the path of inbound mass. The first pair came apart at 12 kilometers. Clean. The mount cycled and reacquired. The third broke at 6, closer than he wanted, still inside tolerance. The fourth broke at 1.5 clicks, inside no tolerance any captain wants to put in writing, and Vance pulled a hard yaw, 22 degrees in under 2 seconds, to throw the residual off our port quarter instead of across the beam. The bridge rocked. I rocked with it. My harness pressed a clean diagonal across my chest and let me back. Alvarez called fires on deck 4 in the same voice she'd used at 91 seconds. Chief engineer voice. It told me the fire was bad. It did not tell me to change my mind about the next thing. 20 seconds later, he was inside rail range. Bako's turrets opened up. Short bursts, predicted leads. The fighter answered. 6 seconds of merge, hits on both sides. Ours walked his port. His walked our midship. Twice, hard enough that the deck plates rang up through the soles of my boots and the overhead lighting cycled amber and back. Alvarez called structural damage on deck 3, half a register higher than the last call. From her, half a register meant a bulkhead I'd be welding before morning. He started a second pass. That was when I read the man at the stick. Hired, paid to do the work cleanly, with the small economies in his turn rate that come from 1,000 hours in the seat. He was not going to break off until he was dead or out of ammunition. He wasn't afraid of my frigate. He should have been. I told Vance to give Bako the arc. Vance brought the nose around 12 degrees. Bako put 3 seconds of rail into the fighter's reactor housing on the second pass. The fighter tumbled. The exhaust went dark. The silhouette wobbled against the starfield, end over end. A slow, flat spin that took 7 seconds to find an answer. The reactor let go on the 8th, and the bloom lit the inside of my bridge through the forward viewports for the length of a breath, white shading to violet, and not one of us made a sound. Bako logged the kill in the same voice he'd logged the contact in. Naidu confirmed decay, not maneuver. He was dead. I watched the bridge for as long as I could hold a breath. Bako was already breaking lock to reacquire the other 2. Around him, the rest of the bridge held. Vance on the helm waiting for the next vector. Alvarez with the fires in hand, and deck 3 inside sustained engagement tolerance. Naidu on the plot, Park on the open channel. None of them needed to be told. I turned to the observer's chair. Admiral Tanaka hadn't moved, hands folded in his lap, eyes on the plot. The only other man I'd seen sit that still in a fight was the captain who taught me how to sit in a chair the size of this one. Tanaka spoke for the second time in 9 minutes.
The other 2.
I put the Calypso back into the fight.
Chapter 6, Yao the Pass. 8 minutes off the station, 2 fighters on our 6, and 1 set of engines worth the difference between making the Calypso's point defense bubble and not. The cabin smelled of hot wiring and the cold sweat of 4 people who had been running numbers longer than the body lets you. The fighters were not gaining as fast as I'd feared. They were not falling back either. The geometry was a knife, and we were running its blade. Saya's plan was a knife too. She laid it out for me at the 70-second mark, eyes on her own board, voice flat.
We run a vector that crosses the Calypso's dorsal at relative velocity 9 kilometers per second. The Calypso opens her firing lane on her top side as we pass. Bako takes 1 fighter off our tail on the cross. We come out the other side inside her point defense bubble. The second fighter either follows us into the bubble or breaks off.
Will the second fighter follow?
He is being paid. He will follow.
I put it to Colbane on the intership channel. He read it back in 2 seconds flat. He did not modify it. He gave it to Vance. Vance gave it to his board. The Calypso came around to put her dorsal toward our crossing vector and clear Bako's lane. The fault was running a vector that was wrong for the fault. The right vector lay further off the frigate. On a tangent, the trailing fighters could not match without cooking their coils. Saya was not flying it. She was flying the vector that put us across the Calypso's firing solution at the moment of the pass, so the railguns could kill the lead chaser. Our hull could not. We did not have the armor for it. Nobody on a survey ship does. The trailing fighter was 40 seconds from rail range. The lead was already inside it, and about to take the shot we were drawing into Baco's solution. Tomas had the engines at 0.89 G of acceleration and rising. He had not said anything for 3 minutes. He does not, when his board is at 0.89 and climbing.
She holds.
A thing becoming less true with each second it was said. He was not yet wrong. He was about to be. I watched the chase on the plot. I read the geometry off the corner of my eye while the rest of me did the work of not dying. Breathing, letting the seat take the load. The vector tightened. It closed. 11 seconds before we crossed into the Calypso's protective envelope. It was going to put us inside the trailing fighter's rail range. 11 seconds is a long time. You watch a number on a plot decrement toward yours and you find that out.
I had Baco on the firing lane, Vance on the dorsal aspect, and the Calypso coming about, slowly for a frigate, on an arc that gave a tactical officer time to think. The bridge lights had dropped to combat amber 40 seconds back, and nobody had noticed. Baco had the lead chaser locked. He was waiting for the merge. He did not speak. He had no reason to. His hands sat one on the firing console and one in his lap, and the lap hand was as steady as the console one. Naidu, at ops, called the closing distance to the fault every 5 seconds. Her voice did not change. The numbers got smaller. Park, at communications, had the fault on the channel and held it open without speaking. A comms officer's contribution at that moment is to stand very still. Alvarez, at damage control, was nominal on every deck except 3, where a hairline pressure leak had opened in a forward compartment we were not using. She had isolated it. She mentioned it on the report channel in the tone reserved for breakfast inventory. I did not speak. There was nothing the room needed from me except that I sit where I sat, while the people I had put at their stations did what I had put them there to do.
The fault crossed over the Calypso at relative velocity 9 kilometers per second. 9,000 meters of separation between hulls every heartbeat. The frigate was a dark mass 200 meters below our keel. Railgun batteries and antenna spines. The hull gray with long service. The lane was open. Baco's railgun turrets opened on the lead chaser at the moment the merge was clean. The kill came through the plot, not the glass. The lead chaser came apart in a tumble that resolved 4 seconds later into a debris vector that was nobody's problem. A bloom of metal and silence. Baco had taken him at the moment of the pass, in the lane, in the window. He had taken him to plan. The trailing chaser fired. 1 railgun burst, 3 rounds. 2 missed. 1 found the starboard engine nacelle and walked a chisel line across the metal. Tomas's board lit up. I heard the alarm before I heard him. A red glare came up off the engineering panel and put a color on Saya's profile that did not belong on a person's face.
She does not hold.
The starboard engine cut. The fault yawed. Saya caught the yaw on navigation and trimmed it before the cabin felt it. Left hand on attitude, right hand on the manual trim, neither of them looking at the other. Tomas was already inside the engineering diagnostic, hands on the board, voice in my ear.
I have 1 engine. I have 1 engine for as long as you do not ask me for more than 0.3 G out of it.
Take us inside the bubble.
Inside the bubble at 0.3 G is 4 minutes.
I have 4 minutes. 4 minutes is what a captain has when nothing's gone wrong. I was spending mine anyway. The Calypso's point defense bubble reached 4 kilometers past her hull on the dorsal aspect. The fault was 3 minutes from inside it at 0.3 G of acceleration. The trailing chaser was 4 minutes from inside rail range of the fault. After the engine hit, that range was where we were going to sit for the duration.
Captain.
Cross, the rear station. He had not spoken since the station died.
I am all right.
I had not asked. He said it anyway, because the saying was what he needed. The voice in the cabin's rear was thinner than it had been at any point since I'd pulled him out of the pod. Glad to hear it. Wrong sentence and right one at the same time. Cross got his weight. The plot kept my eyes. The fault crossed into the Calypso's point defense bubble at 3 minutes 41 seconds. The trailing chaser fired 1 more rail burst at the edge of it. Baco's point defense took the rounds. Then the trailing chaser broke off. Chapter 7. on the same side.
The trailing fighter, the last of the three that had come up out of the bottom of the system at 0614, broke off at the edge of my point defense envelope. Naidu called the break from ops, voice flat. She had called every break since Tycho with the same flatness. Bako had been holding the lock through the first 10 seconds of the run, long enough to read his vector and his damage profile, and the rate at which his atmosphere was leaking through the railgun hits Bako had put on him in the cross. The leak rate told me he had 90 minutes of usable air. The vector told me he did not intend to use it where I could watch. He was running, not in panic. He was running on a vector that bent toward the deep belt, at an acceleration profile that pointed at a rendezvous on no chart I had ever held. Bako had the lock. The firing solution sat green on the master display, steady, unblinking. Bako could have taken the shot. I looked at Tanaka. Tanaka did not look at me. He had left the observer's chair at some point in the pass. I had not seen him do it, and was standing 2 paces behind the command chair, hands behind his back, eyes on the plot. He spoke for the 3rd time in 11 minutes.
He is going home. He will tell whoever sent him that an SDC frigate fired on her contractors. Let him go.
He did not name her. He did not need to. I told Bako to hold the lock and not take the shot. Bako held the lock and did not take the shot. The fighter ran for the deep belt at a vector that bent away from us. The lock degraded at 14 kilometers, and the plot lost him entirely at 26. Naidu cleared the board. The bridge crew exhaled at slightly different times. No one wanted to be the first. I logged the non-engagement as a deliberate non-engagement of a hostile contact in retreat, ordered by the senior flag officer aboard. The log would be available when it was asked for, to whoever asked for it. That was Tanaka's choice. I had carried it.
The fault drifted on one engine inside the Calypso's bubble at 0.3 G. We had crossed the envelope at 3 minutes and 41 seconds. The trailing fighter had broken off at 4 minutes 10. The plot had gone clean at 6. The cabin had not. Cross had his eyes open, focused on nothing in particular. On him, that was a form of work. Amara had a hand on his shoulder, not for comfort, for diagnostic. Saya was running diagnostics on the navigation suite. 2 screens up, a 3rd paused on a contact track she had not yet closed. Tomas was elbow deep in the engineering board, talking to the ship under his breath in the Spanish his daughter would not have recognized. I sat in the chair for the length of a held breath. Nothing on the boards required anything of me for the breath. The breath was for me. Calypso, this is Meridian Fault. Requesting tow tether and docking instructions. Park came back without static this time. We were close enough now that the relay had collapsed to line of sight, a small comfort of its own. You could hear the man's room behind his voice. Meridian Fault, Calypso. Tether on your port side dorsal at 100 meters. Hangar Bay 2 for personnel. Welcome inside. 8 years running a survey ship in the outer belt, and no one had ever welcomed me inside an SDC frigate. The phrase had a weight on it. Whether the man who said it had meant it that way, I could not tell from here. I keyed back. Calypso, Fault. Inbound on your tether.
19 years of command, and I had never stood on a hangar deck waiting to meet a civilian captain whose ship had just come off a kinetic action under my cover. The protocol did not exist. I had improvised it an hour earlier, in the 4 minutes between the trailing fighter breaking off and the Fault crossing into the dock. The protocol was simple. Meet them at the airlock, alone. Admiral 2 paces back. Say what was true. Say no more than that. Offer their captain my hand, because that is what one captain offers another when both crews are still alive. The hangar smelled of cold metal and reaction mass scrub. The deck rang under the boots of the 2 deckhands who had set the cradle and then withdrawn to a respectful distance because I had asked them to. Tanaka stood where I had asked him to stand. The airlock cycled. 5 of them stepped through. Captain Shaw came through first. He was younger than the file had led me to expect. A folder under his left arm. His right hand loose at his side. I noted that. A pilot's right hand loose at his side at a meeting is a pilot who has not yet decided whether the meeting is a meeting. Behind him, his engineer, with grease on the back of one wrist and the focused look of a man whose mind was still inside a diagnostic. Behind the engineer, his navigation officer. I had her service record. In the 4 seconds of eye contact at the airlock, I did not indicate I had her service record. She did not indicate she knew that I did. Behind her, a woman in a research jacket with a sealed canister under one arm, held close, signed for. Behind her, an older man with gray at the temples, and an expression I had only seen on the faces of men who had once buried a crew. I stepped forward. I offered Captain Shaw my hand. I said what the protocol required. Captain Shaw, welcome aboard the Calypso. I am Captain Alan Colbane. The Admiral and I would like a word with you and your crew at your convenience in the wardroom. Captain Shaw looked at my hand for half a second. Then he took it. His grip was dry, brief, professional. He did not squeeze. He did not let go too early.
Captain Colbane, thank you for the lane.
That was the entire greeting. I have served under flag officers who would have given me a paragraph for what Shaw gave me in 5 words. The 5 words were enough. I introduced the Admiral. Tanaka inclined his head. That is what he does in place of every other formality. To anyone who has served under him, the head incline is the most formal thing he does.
Captain Shaw, the wardroom, now would be useful.
After you, Admiral. We walked. The Calypso's main corridor between the hangar deck and the wardroom was 3 minutes at a normal pace. We did it in 3 minutes at a normal pace. No one spoke. Nothing in a corridor was going to land better than it would land in a room. Cross walked beside me. He was looking at the bulkheads. A man who had helped put a bulkhead like one of these in service 42 years ago, looking at one that was still standing. His fingers brushed a seam once and dropped. He did not say anything. He did not need to. Behind us, Saya kept Tomas between herself and Tanaka. She had not looked at Tanaka since the hangar deck. Tanaka, ahead of her, had not turned to look at her. The not looking on both sides was the same not looking that had filled the corridor at Ganymede and the bar at Ceres, and every other room the two of them had ever been in together. The not looking was its own greeting. Amara had Cross's other side, the canister against her ribs. Her free hand stayed near her hip, near nothing in particular. On her, that meant she was counting paces. We came to the wardroom door. The door opened. Tanaka went in first. Colbane stepped aside for the rest of us. The 5 of us went through, and the door closed behind us with the soft hydraulic compression of a door designed by people who had decided doors should sound serious. Surviving a thing you should not have survived is its own kind of intelligence. It tells you something about how badly someone wanted otherwise. The belt does not know yet. The belt does not know that on day 51 of a run that traces back to a dead station 42 years in the making, an SDC frigate put rounds into mercenary contractors over a civilian survey ship. The contractors are gone. The frigate is at station keeping 900 meters off our hull, and the lights in her gunnery bays are still up. The senator who hired the contractors does not know yet either. She will, inside the hour. The trailing fighter is going home with the news she paid not to receive, and there is no version of the next 24 hours in which she does not find out that an SDC frigate has chosen, in daylight, to stand on the other side of her. That is what happened today. That is what the wardroom door closed on.
Before I gave the order to stand down, my long-range scan picked up a thermal trace at the edge of detection. Small carrier, 240,000 kilometers off our port quarter. Coast vector, outbound, engines cold, drift profile clean. It was not running for the deep belt. It was running for a heading I did not, in the moment of reading it, want to be reading. I did not log the heading. I held it on a private terminal and closed the file. I will log it in the wardroom, in front of the captain and his crew, and the admiral, when I put the question on the table that the rest of us are going to have to answer next. Whose carrier? Where bound?
Amara had the canister in her hand. Cross was looking at it. The door was shut. The rest of us were at the table, 6 of us breathing the same air, none of us breathing easily. She was holding 9 grams of station air dust in a sealed glass tube, and the tube caught the wardroom light along its rim. And Cross was looking at it like a man who had just been handed evidence he did not yet know how to read.
There is something in this dust we have not yet measured. I do not know what it is. I will know in the morning. The morning is going to be interesting.
The morning was going to be a great many things. Interesting was the least of them. My name is Declan Shaw. The Meridian Fault is intact. My crew is alive. A senator I have never met spent 42 years arranging for this morning not to happen. This morning happened anyway. I do not know what she will do. I know she will do something. We will see what she does about it. If you're still here, you're who this is for. The Meridian Fault keeps flying, patched, lighter by 1 drive cone, pointed outbound. The senator keeps moving. The carrier is going somewhere we haven't been told, and we are going after it anyway. Subscribe and you'll see where the dust takes us. Hit the bell, and you'll know when the next chapter lands. Drop a line in the comments about what you think is out there. I read all of them, every one.